What's good, family? We had 1,100 subscribers. I'm going for 5 for the next goal. And I want to make this a special episode for black people in the study of race, genetics, and IQ. There's no such thing as genetic superior IQ. It does not exist. And I'm going back to World War I when the Army was giving out mental tests and comparison because, who was that birth of a nation president? Woodrow Wilson. You know, he was a big time bigot and racist. Big time. Anything that can be used to legally declare black people as inferior will be used. And we've been proving this or disproving this for generations. Let me start, my bad, before World War I. I'm going to start with the Chinese and Japanese. From a study from 1945 to 1949, the IQ of Chinese Americans was 98.5 compared to the norm of 100 for whites. And I'm going to get into this norm later on in this video. And I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible because I know I'm dealing with different age groups. Some people don't have the attention span. So I want to keep the audience attention because this is very important when white people try and use it against you. Okay, now with the Chinese having an IQ of 98.5 compared to the average of 100 for whites, this is the results, and the Japanese are included in this also. Both Japanese and Chinese Americans' occupational achievements surpass whites with the same IQ. Both Japanese and Chinese Americans' occupational achievements surpass whites with the same IQs or with higher IQs. An IQ test is not a predictor of success or educational achievement. It's basically a culture test based on white middle class and upper middle class. So the Japanese were deficient under whites by 10 points. The Chinese by 20 points. So if the average IQ was 100, they saying the Japanese at that time had a 90 IQ, and at certain periods the Chinese had an 80 IQ. So I don't want to say this is contradictory, 98.5, but you're going through different age groups, different classes of culture, of learning of two different Asian immigrants. But like people say, this is not a per capita, but you gotta look at per capita. No, this is not that. But yet, they excelled. So the IQ is not a genetic disposition to have Margaret Sanger laws enacted upon you. Matter of fact, side note, right quick, and audience, don't let me forget, it was a law that was passed, or it was addressed the issue of the Japanese outperforming whites in a certain industry, and they went to make a law against that because the Japanese had a lower standard of living. They didn't need all the money. They didn't need the Maybach versus the Chevy. They didn't need the mansion versus a modest home. They didn't need the, I don't know, the new trend of jeans. Matter of fact, I'll just take it back. they didn't need the red monkey jeans. They could do Levi's, go to the Gap or whatever. So they can work harder, sell at a fair price, and survive and be content. This is supposed to be a place of competition. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, whatever. So, but I need to find that particular law and make a video of that. That's the end of the side note. So, another thing with black people, they say, oh, when blacks go to these colleges, Harvard and MIT, they don't graduate affirmative action, and they taking stuff from the white man and Asians, and let's see what happened. With that, a lot of blacks are mismatched with colleges. If whatever city you grew up in, urban area, and another side note, rural residents underscore or do worse than urban residents in these so-called IQ tests. When blacks they could be in any urban area, they could be the top 10% of their school system, district, or even school system or district or city. They could be in the top 10 academics. But compared to the students at MIT, you're going up against the top 1%, whether they are black, white, or Asian. Because every black person that goes to MIT does not fail. For blacks, it can have a dropout rate or non-graduating rate of 50%. Because they were accepted for some type of academic or racial grandstanding. The truth is, they're not dumb. They are mismatched with the college that they qualify for, versus the study of black students in colleges and schools with white students have the same IQ. The black people have a much higher graduation rate. So because you're in the top 10% in your city does not mean you're going to excel, because some of these kids are coming from schools where their parents have money and the schools are funded to distribute top tier education. When you were in 5th grade learning what you're learning in your school in the urban area, these kids are learning 8th grade education, math, reading, science in the 5th grade, which continually will put them in the top 1 percentile for an MIT education. So, black people, there's thousands of colleges out here. You qualify for one, you graduated high school. You don't have to be in the top tier to qualify to be an engineer, a lawyer, because you can always continue to learn and master your craft. With that being said, test scores between children of overseas mass immigration parents to America, Ellis Island, produced test scores in the 70 and 80 IQ range across multiple tests. Because the IQ tests had different ones for whatever reason. I'm not about to get into all of that because I want to keep it short and keep the attention span, keep it interesting. And that's excuse me, all the European immigrants that came here. Even the Israelis, Slavs, Poles, all of them. Because they were not from the white middle class culture. But after that, they grafted them in at the same time while suppressing the upward movement of foundational black Americans. And on another side note, but out of the country study, how people advertise that Indians from India are so naturally smart. A 1962 study of Indian children in South Africa found that they had an IQ average of 86.8, the exact same as the African children living in the same region. So we're not finna let racists get away with this genetically smart. Matter of fact, the high IQ society, people can look it up, has, depending on the IQ test for the society, and to make it make sense, the other part that goes with that, which was debunked before any of us were born, that white people had bigger brains because they had bigger heads that made them smarter, and they tried to say the same thing with Asians. I looked up the High IQ Society, which has been around for a long time, and there was a Caucasian woman, and her head was smaller than mine, and she had an IQ almost 200, and she was a musician. But I'm not even going to mention her name to make it seem like I'm dragging her through the mud. You all look up High IQ Society and see what you find and do your own research. Now, I'm going to take a sip of this apple juice. That came from some good apples. So, let's move on. What else did I write? I had to do some research on this. Okay, so mental tests by the U.S. Army during World War I. World War I. Black folks from the South, it was a lot of illiteracy because we know during the Reconstruction period when black folks could read and write and were elected to office through the South, the Klan, the white folks couldn't take it. They had to invent the Klan and do the first form of domestic terrorism. Get them blacks out of there. That's when they start defunding the school systems. Oh, you think you're smart? Well, you're not now. Let's see in the next 30 years how good you all can read. Ha ha. Yeah, the got you moment. Reconstruction period. Look it up, young folks, grown folks too. And these acts did a lot of damage to upward movement. So when they did the mental test in the Army, they seen that the people that were illiterate, the black folks, in comparison to white folks, white people score higher because the funding for black schools went full throttle to the white schools in the South. The thing that mind-boggled them was when the black people took the non-reading part of the test, they excelled more than the whites in the South. And another thing, of course, white people are not going to like this, but they don't like a lot of stuff I say, but it's documented. You do your own research. No gaslighting, no DNC crap coming on in here. But with the comments. But black people in Ohio and Illinois did better than whites that could read and write. They did better than whites in all aspects of the test. So is it genetic? Is it? If it was, that would have been wholeheartedly proven over 100 years ago. So with that in mind, it's more of I don't have anything left, but I'm racially smart. I'm smarter, genetically smarter by a high IQ over these people. Now I'm gonna throw this in. You know, these researchers like to go to the Sudan and say, "Oh, Sub-Sahara, not the Sudan, Sahara. Sub-Saharan Africa has a lower IQ, lowest IQ in the world at 65 or whatever. They can't do anything." But you don't want to go to colleges around the world that have sub-Saharan Native African students and test them. So if Sub-Saharan Africa is so stupid genetically, who in the fuck built those trade routes that's hidden under the sand of the Sahara Desert when the Sahara was a place of vegetation? And even at the point where it was transformed into a desert, go to NASA. Go to NASA and look what the satellites found. Who built them? You know, white people ain't built it. They're so stupid, but they built trade routes. So black people are fighting for their heritage, for their history, for their lineage and truth, not just hip-hop culture, not just music, but for our birthright and our legacy of going through slavery, being kidnapped, being beat for being caught with books for reading as slaves, being lynched and murdered for self-defense, or telling a white man, "No, you cannot have this for free if I have a business." So this is the conclusion of this video for this part of Black History Month. No, you are not genetically inferior. No race is. No human being born on this earth, no matter what race you are genetically inferior or superior with intelligence. Peace. I'm out. Conscious Thought 101.